Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. General rule is that when a person dies and the soul leaves the body, the soul departs from this world, never to come back again till the day of judgment. However, there are stories in the Quran where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala brought people back to life in this world. And today we'll talk about 3 such stories right from the Quran. Story number 1 comes from Surah Al-Baqarah. And that is the story after which the surah is called Al-Baqarah, the cow. The story is of a man who is basically killed by his own nephew. And he's one of the rich people, the guy who died and his nephew. Killer, the nephew had support system from within the chiefs. The story goes back to the times of Musa alayhi salam. And the killer and his friends, that the friends wanted to protect the killer. So nobody would name who killed the rich man. In fact, the nephew himself went to the court, opened an investigation as to who killed my uncle. I have every right to know. When this kind of an irony occurred, Musa alayhi salam made dua to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala ordered Musa alayhi salam to tell his people to slaughter a cow. After the cow gets slaughtered, take any piece of the meat of the cow and tap the dead person with that meat. The dead person will raise back to life from dead and will tell the name of the killer and will die again. That was a very, very unique incident of its kind. When Musa alayhi salam told this to his people, instead of working on what their prophet is telling them to do, they went back by making fun and they said, "Attakhizuna huzwa, are you kidding with us? How is it possible?" And then Musa alayhi salam said, well, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has ordered you to do so. But then they started to make things very complicated for themselves, and we will not go into the details of the story today. However, you can read them in the Quran, or if you want, we can talk about it at a different time. So eventually, they made it so much difficult for themselves that there was only one cow left in the area in which they were able to find, and that person asked a very hefty amount for that cow, and they had to pay that lump sum big amount to get that one particular cow and slaughter it, because indirectly they did not want to disclose the killer. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wanted the killer's name to be disclosed. They slaughtered the cow, took a piece out of the cow's meat, tapped the dead person, was raised back to life from dead. He stood up, told the name of the killer, that was his nephew, and died again. That's one story out of the 3 stories that I want to tell you today, where a person was brought back to life only for a short while, only to speak again, and then died again. Subhanallah. Inna Allah ala kulli shay'in qadir. Let's go to the story number 2. Again happened in the times of Musa alayhi salam, where his people said, "Lan nu'mina laka hatta nara Allah jahra." We will not gonna believe in you until we see Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala with our own eyes. So every tribe put forth some of its chief. A group of 70 men accompanied Musa alayhi salam on this journey. However, Musa alayhi salam knew that these people are being stubborn. They cannot withstand this. And that's exactly what happened. They all died in no time. Couldn't withstand. Of course, who can see Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in this world? But then Musa alayhi salam made dua to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala brought all 70 of these chiefs from the children of Israel back to life. And they repented on what they were asking for, and they returned back. So this is another story where people were brought back to life only to finish their remaining life. And they all died a natural death afterwards. But this was a handful of people, less than 100 men. And this thing happened where they went to see Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Story number 3. Part of Surah Al-Baqarah. This happened at the times of Hizqeel alayhi salam, where a group of people, long story short, I'll summarize, a group of people would leave their city whenever a pandemic would hit their city to save their lives, and these were rich people. And when they will move out of the city, the pandemic would go away, they will come back, they will return back to their city, and they would save themselves like that. And the poor people were like, only if we also had means to travel outside of the city, we would do so when the pandemic hits, so we could also save our lives. So that's what happened. In the next fall of the pandemic, the rich people started to move outside, and these poor people accompanied them. So for the fear of dying, they thought they could escape death by simply moving out of a place. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wanted to show them you cannot escape death. It can come to you, doesn't matter where you are, however you are. And that's exactly what happened. The Quran says, وَهُمْ أُلُوفٌ نَذَرَ الْمَوْتِ. And they, with the fear of death, they were in thousands, they flee away. But then what happened? When they left the city and they thought that they are in a safe place, فَقَالَ لَهُمُ اللَّهُ مُوتُوا. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala ordered them all to die. And they all died. And then in the books of tafsir, we find that Hizqeel alayhi salam went past these people, and this time they had died for years. And their bodies were buried by the locals of the area where they died. And he went past this and he made dua to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to bring these people back to life. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala brought all of the people from this particular city, and they were in thousands, they were brought back to life. Subhanallah. And they all went back to their cities, praising Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and repenting for what their thought process was before. And they lived a natural life the rest of their life, and then they died a natural death. So this is another story right from the Quran. So 3 different stories, 3 different circumstances. First story, it was a short-lived one. Second story, we see that there were only a handful of people from the chiefs of the children of Israel. And then the third story, we see that there are thousands and thousands of people who were at a different social status from a city, thought they could escape death. So the idea is you cannot escape death. Every person has to die. Kullu nafsin dha'iqatul maut. But remember, when you die, you don't necessarily die. It's like your soul, which has been alive in the world of souls for we don't know for however many years, has now been given a body in this material world to live within the body for a certain amount of time. Then the time for the soul to leave the body comes. You and I call it death, but doesn't mean the man or human finishes. Human still continues to live because the soul never dies. Soul leaves the body and continue to live on in the barzakh, which you call the grave life or the life of the barzakh. That's where, based on how that soul lived its life when it was on the earth, based on the deeds it collected, it will either be in the punishment or will be in the blessings. Till the day of judgment, when the soul will be reunited with the body and the person will go in front of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala on the day of judgment, where the decision will be made about this person whether to go in the hellfire or to enter the Jannah. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make us among those people who will enter Jannah, Jannatul Firdaus. We must ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for Jannatul Firdaus. May Allah enter all of us in Jannatul Firdaus without any questions asked. May we be the chosen ones. Ameen. Allahumma salli ala Muhammadin wa ala ali Muhammadin sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sallam.